Hello and welcome to one of Saturday's editions of Cracking the Cryptic. I don't know whether this will be the first video or the second video, but we are maintaining our schedule of 2 videos a day during this self-isolation period of history. So Mark, I think, is going to be recording a solve of a puzzle from the recent Sudoku Grand Prix, so that's worth looking out for. And I am going to be on Classic Sudoku today. As I was yesterday, but I'm hoping this won't be quite as brutal as the puzzle I faced yesterday, which was Derek Neal's sort of beyond diabolical madness. I mean, it was a brutal puzzle. Now, this puzzle on screen is by Dean Mayer, who has an unusual story, I guess, in that he's one of my favourite crossword compilers. Not Sudoku at all. He's a brilliant setter of cryptic crosswords, and he writes for all of the major UK broadsheets, and I never knew he was a Sudoku compiler, but he sent us a puzzle a couple of weeks ago. We recorded a video of it on the channel, and it was a brilliant puzzle, and in consequence he sent us another one, so this should be great fun. Do click on the link under the video if you want to play along. That will take you to this web page where you can you should see something very similar to what I have on my screen. Other things to mention, we've had a number of puzzle hunts sent to us from viewers in response to our puzzle hunts that we've published recently. So we published 2 free puzzle hunts on Patreon, one for juniors, one for children, and we've had children as young as 8 years old solving that one. And then an adult one as well, which has had, I think, 3 correct solutions so far, so that's proved far more difficult. But it seems to have got your creative juices flowing, and we've had at least 2 that I am hopeful we will be able to share with you in due course from viewers. They look very, very interesting indeed. So watch this space as regards that. And if you are starved of puzzle hunts, then you could always sponsor us on Patreon, where we have got another one behind the paywall there. It's $2 a month to do that, and obviously Mark and I really appreciate anything you can do to support the channel. Now, let's have a look at this. Let's get cracking. How do we do this puzzle? We can put some 7s in down there. Let's do that. 3s in one of those 2 positions. That's these 3s interacting. I can place a 4 in the grid. Look, those 4s interact. Let's place a 4 there. That places 4s in the pencil marks over on this side. 3s, 2s, 2s, these 2s, look, they allow us to pencil mark some 2s at the top, and therefore in one of those positions. Fives can be pencil marked up there. Usual start of a Sudoku, you know, we're just trying to pick digits off. Oh, 1-3s, 1s and 3s. They operate very nicely on this bottom box. Look, they're going to give us a 1-3 pair in those 2 squares. Those are the only 2 squares that 1 and 3 can go into in box 8 now. So that's going to allow us to pencil mark some 1s over there and some 3s over here. Now, look, we have 3s aligned. So we have 2 different 3x3 blocks here where the 3s are locked into column 1 and column 3. Now, why does this matter? Well, there's 2 ways to think about it. If you imagine you looked at the finished solution, one possibility would be there would be a 3 in this position, and we know if there's a 3 in this position, there's going to have to be a 3 there. The only other possibility in the finished solution is that there's a 3 here. If there's a 3 there, there's going to be a 3 there. So you can immediately see in this box up here, the 3s can't go in any of those squares, because there's definitely going to be either a 3 here or a 3 here, and either a 3 here or a 3 here. The other way of thinking about this is to say, where can we place a 3 in column 2? You can see it can't go in these 3 squares, it can't go in these 3 squares, so it must be in one of those 2 squares. Now that 3 is interesting because it knocks out this square from containing a 3. So where can the 3 go in this box here? It's going to have to be in one of 4 squares, but those 4 squares are definitely in row 1 or row 3, just as these 3s are. So we get the same thing again, slightly more complicated, but where can we place a 3 in row 2 now? Can't be in any of those squares. So it can't be here because of this 3, it's going to have to be there, that's a 3. That gives us our 5th digit, look, in row 2, so we need 1, 2, 6 and 8. That square can only be a 6 or an 8. There's nothing else there, I don't think. This square though, that's restricted. We've got 1, 2 and 3 in the column and none of those digits appearing in the row. So this digit must be a 5 or a 7. Okay, what next? Answers on a postcard, please. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing anything at the moment. Sixes, threes, ones. Oh. Ah, yes. Okay. Right. So we do have an X-swing here on ones. So let's look at ones in relation to this column. So where can we place a 1? Well, this 1 knocks out those squares. This one knocks out that square. So there's only 2 positions the 1 can go into. Let's colour those in. Now, see if you can spot another column where the same thing applies. And these pencil marked ones here mean that the 1s can't go in those 3 squares in column 8. And the 1 over here knocks out that one as well. So we get the same arrangement, look. So in these 2 columns, the 1s must be in either row 1 or in row 5. Now, why does that matter? Well, it matters because we can do this trick a bit like we did with the 3s when we looked at those, and we can ask ourselves what are we going to see in the finished solution? And we know that there's either going to be a 1 here, and if there is, there will be a 1 there. The only other position that could exist in the finished solution is that there'll be a 1 here, because we know the 1 is in exactly one of these 2 positions. So if it's not here, it must be here. And if it's here, it must be here. And this creates this sort of X shape, which gives the X-swing its name. And the critical thing we just have to realise about this pattern, therefore, is that in the finished grid, there'll either be a 1 here or here. There'll either be a 1 in, definitely be a 1 in one of the 2 positions at the top of the X, and there'll definitely be a 1 in one of these 2 positions at the bottom of the X, which means we can eliminate 1 from all of these squares. Now, does that matter? I have no idea. Well, the way I normally deal with X-swings like this, though, is I try and identify the squares that are affected by the X-swing directly. So you can actually see, if I highlight that, if I leave these highlighted, and then we can talk about it. 1 second. So those are all yellow squares. These are all potentially affected by the X-swing, but these 3 are not affected by the X-swing because we already had a 1 in the box, so we'll make those white again. This one is not affected because of the 1 here. These 2 are obviously not affected because they're given digits. So the 1 affects, doesn't affect that one. So just this subset of yellow squares are important. So what can we say? So maybe, no, that's no use. That's no use. So all I'm doing here is I'm wondering exactly. That's not really any. This one is perhaps the most restricted because this can't be a 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 or 1. So this has got to be 2, 8 or 9. That is not much of a restriction. What am I missing here? This square is also restricted, but not by the X-wing. Look, this square can't be too much. It can't be 1. It could be a 2, I think. It can't be 3, 4, or 5, or 6. So that square is a 2 or an 8. So what I'm doing now is I'm trying to work out whether I can eliminate one of these digits. And I'm failing. Sorry about this. Oh. Oh, no, I'm not failing. I've missed these. Yes, I see. I see. Okay, I was a bit slow here, but look, we need to look at these columns again because there is something more going on, and it relates to the 2's. So these pencil mark 2's here mean that this top square can't be a 2 in column 2. This square can't be a 2 because of that one. And this one can't be a 2 because of that one. So there is another X-wing, I think, going on here on 2's, because if we look at column 8, douche, 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 those 3 squares can't be 2. So the 2's are, gosh, locked into the same columns of the grid. So the 2's must be in one of these 2 positions. Now, you can immediately see this is going to have a profound effect on this square. If we eliminate the 2 from this square has to be an 8. That's going to give us a 9 here as well, and we're going to be off and running. But just to mention that when you get this beautiful pattern of overlapping X-wings, these 2 squares are now a 1-2 pair. So this is something to bear in mind. If you get an overlapping X-wing, look at the squares where the overlap happens. Consider, we know this is an X-wing on 1's up here. We know this is an X-wing on 2's down here. These squares have to be a 1 and a 2. Now you may say, why? Well, let's think about that for a moment. Let's think about the 1's first. We know that the 1's are either here and here, or here and here in the finished solution. So if they're here and here, let's actually put it in to show you. What happens to the 2's? Because we know there's an X-wing on 2's down here. So if this square is a 1, the 2 is forced down, because the 2 can only be in one of 2 positions. And if the 2 is forced down, this can no longer be a 2, so that square will be a 2. So look at that, we have a 1 and a 2, and the argument works exactly the same way if instead we were to put the 1 in this square, or the 1 in this square. Who pays your money, who takes your choice. It'll just unwind in the other direction, you'll get a 1 here and a 2 here. So these 2 squares are always a 1 and a 2, therefore this square is an 8. This square is a 9. These two squares are 5 and 6, and there's a 5 here, so this must be a 6, this must be a 5. And let's hope that this proves useful in terms of the solve. So now we've got 9's down here, and we've got 9's here and here, forcing a 9 down there, look, which is lovely. So these 9's now force a 9 into one of those squares, and that 9 disambiguates it. So this is a 9, this is a 4, this is a 9 now, just these 9's interacting. This is a 9, this is a 9, and we've done all the 9's. Now let's just check the 4's. Yeah, we can do more with the 4's. These 4's interact, force a 4 into one of those 2 squares. So those are 4's now. 5s. Yes, we can do things with the 5s, and this 5, that forces that square to be a 5, which forces this square to be a 5. Now, as soon as we place this 5, we've interrupted our X-wing on 2s now. So we now know, because we know that 2s have to be on one diagonal, they can't be on this diagonal anymore. So they must be on this diagonal. And that means we can unwind the 1 X-wing as well. Wow. It's just a gorgeous pattern, this. It's a gorgeous pattern. Right, so now this, I'm hoping, will be a big step in terms of the finished solution. Let's see where we can go from here. We can pencil some 6s up there, look. This 2, do we get anything more from that? Not really. This 2, we get some pencil mark 2s from that. This square must be a 7 or an 8. Five. These squares are 6, 7, 8 in some order. There's an 8 there. So this square must be the 8. That locks an 8 up there, and an 8 into one of these 2 squares. So these 2 squares now are 2 and 7. Locks a 7 into one of those 2 positions. Where can we put, there must be an 8 in one of those 2 squares in this box because of these 8s, look. And if we have a look along here, we still need to place 6 and 7 in the row. So the 7 here disambiguates that. That's a 7, that's a 6. This is a 6, this is a 2. That forces this to be a 2 and this to be a 3. That's a 3, that's a 4, and that's a 1. Place the 1s down here now. These 2 squares have got to be 4 and 8. Now that's nice because if we scan across and we're concentrating, we see the 8's locked into row 1 and row 3 again. So where does the 8 go in row 2? This is the only option. It must be here. That's going to give us this digit. Look, that's going to be a 1. This is a 1. These 2 squares have got to be 5 and 7. 1, 3, 8 here. I feel like we're almost there. Just need probably one more digit and that should be it. So let's try and find that. These 3s are nice because they lock a 3 into one of those 2 squares where it joins its friend the 2. So that's a 2-3 pair. So in the rest of this box up here, we still need to place 4, 6 and 7. So the 6 must be in one of those squares. 4 must be in one of those squares. And we don't yet know about the 7. 3, 5. What next? Let's have a look at column 9, where we still need to place 5 and 6. Feel like we should be able to unwind that already, but doesn't look like we can quite. Let's have a look at this column then, where we still need to place 6, 7 and 8. So this square here is a 6 or a 7. These 2 are 6, 7 or 8. 5, 7s. Where does a 5 go in the bottom? Look, that's been sitting there for a while. That fixes that, that fixes that, that fixes the 6 and the 5. That must be a 6 up there, that's a 5. So now these 2 squares are a 7, 8 pair. 6 here shifts the 6 down to that square. 4, 7, 8 across there. This is a 6. There we go. these two squares have got to be 4 and 7, and the 4 there tells us which is the order. So that's 4, 4, 8, 8, 7. This must be a 7 now. That forces the 7, 8 to unwind in that order. That gives us the 7 and the 2. Now there must be a 2 in one of those squares. 2, 3, 2, 3. What else do we need? What do we need in there? We must need a 4. That's going to be yeah, we can resolve that. We're getting a bit. 4, 2, 2, 3, 3, 1, 1, and that should be an 8, and we are done. Beautiful puzzle again, Dean. Fantastic. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and yeah, come back either tomorrow or later tonight for another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.